Good morning, South Coast listeners and listeners from further afield. And here we are again, looking at the end of another week. And with time going so fast, I thought it would be a good idea to look at your inheritance. Yes, the things we inherit from our parents or grandparents sometimes. Now, let's look at we inherit their eyes, perhaps their nose, perhaps big ears or little ears, maybe a family business, or perhaps a yacht and a fortune to sail around the world with. Wouldn't that be great? Perhaps you inherited a musical talent. However, that now begs the question, did you inherit the talent, as in the big ears or the little ears, or did you develop this talent as a result of your exposure to music during your growing years? We often hear musicians, singers say that growing up there was always music in our home, and that's where my love for music came from. That's where I learned to play a particular instrument. So that was not inherited as such. It was the exposure to it that resulted in you developing that talent or that love for music, singing a particular instrument, or as the case may be, woodworking. Now, having said that, there are certain traits, character traits or behaviors that we say we inherit, but we didn't really. I'm referring to the bad behaviors, the impulse control, the having a short fuse, the impatience, and the bullying behavior. That is ascribed. We hear people say, oh, you know, he's just like his father. His father also had a short fuse. Or she's just like her mother. Her mother would also sulk for days on end if her husband didn't do this or that or the next thing. And we claim that these things are inherited, listeners, but they're not. They are learnt behaviors. They are behaviors that we are copying. We saw our mom and dad do it, and we saw it worked for them, and therefore we copy it. We also may not have learned another way, a better way to handle a particular situation. So it becomes a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. You know, if there was a situation at home and Dad just flew off the handle and was shouting and slamming doors, and then the whole family would run around to make things right because, we don't want Dad to be upset because he is just so unpleasant when he's upset. And then Mom would say, or Granny would say, oh, he's just like his father. Well, he didn't inherit that. So if we say, I'm just like my dad, or he or she's just like her parent, then we absolve them of taking responsibility for that behavior. Then it is a case of, well, I'm just like my mom. She was like this, and I can't help it. I'm not to blame. If anyone is to blame, it's my mom or my dad or whichever parent or great parent, granny or grandpa, I am copying, gets the blame for this behavior. And really, I want us to focus particularly on those things today, the unpleasant things we do that we ascribe to someone else, to a parent or a grandparent that displayed this behavior, which we are now copying. So, listeners, have a look at yourself for starters and ask yourself if you are behaving in a way that is similar or identical to a way your parent or parents behaved. The opposite is also true, of course, if we are as patient and as loving and as giving as a parent was. That's a great thing to have copied. But I particularly want to focus on the poor behaviors, the bullying behavior, the behavior that causes others to accommodate you so that they can avoid having to encounter or deal with your subsequent bad behavior if you don't get your way. So these behaviors that are displayed are a choice. It's not a given. Just like you can grow up in a family where everybody's very musical and you decide you're going to be an athlete. That is a choice you make. You don't have to behave in the same way as a parent did, particularly if that was a bad behavior. You do not have to perpetuate the behaviors that did not create a loving home, that did not create mutual respect and mutual consideration. Don't have that knee-jerk reaction of, I'm just going to get cross and fly off the handle if I don't get my way, or if something upsets me. This is how I deal with it, and that's the only tool I have in my toolbox. Get another tool. Learn how to deal with things that don't sit well with you necessarily. Learn to not get frustrated so quickly, but to sit back and think and work out a way that is going to be advantageous to solving the problem in a way that fosters quality of life. Let me wrap all these things of respect, consideration. Let me wrap that up in the sentence quality of life. Raise the bar. Because your children are watching you. Your children are going to copy these behaviors, and your children may or may not get away with it in adulthood, but either way, you are not making them better people. Don't worry about the material things you're going to leave your children. Yes, it's very nice if we can inherit or leave our children a little windfall, but fortunes are made and lost every day. And the things that last are the qualities that make you a better human being. It is the quality of respect, of integrity, the example we set for our children, the skills we give them through our example to handle life's ups and downs effectively and in a way that makes their family a better place and the world a better place. And so it gets passed down. Your grandchildren will learn from their parents as they have learned from you to manage situations, difficult situations or irritating situations or frustrating situations, the everyday things like being stuck in the traffic or being cut off by someone in the traffic or the waiter getting your order wrong, of not flying off the handle, of not having that knee-jerk reaction, and then blaming it on, well, I'm just like my mother or my father. But taking responsibility for it and say, you know what, I need to do better. And if I do better, my children inherit, and I use that word advisedly now, inherit better. Let people say, he or she is an amazing person, but they got that from the parent who was an amazing person. We do have people in interviews saying, you know what, my mom or my dad was just the most wonderful person I ever knew. And I constantly strive to copy what they did and the life they lived and the values they embodied. And those are the things we want to leave our children. Well, they can inherit your big ears, and there's not much you can do about that. And they can inherit your beautiful eyes, and that's wonderful. And there's not much we can do about what they inherit from a physical point of view. But we can totally control the behaviors we copy from our parents when we examine them and we think back and say, you know what, growing up, my mom or my dad had the habit of doing X, Y, or Z, and it wasn't very pleasant for the rest of us in the home. If my dad had a bad day at work and he would, I'm not saying my dad, if your dad came home and he would slam the doors and be grumpy, that wasn't very pleasant because kids and mom would be waiting around and say, oh, what mood is dad going to come home in? And you copy that behavior as you grow up. You say, well, I've had a bad day and it is now my right to make my family the dumping ground. Well, look at those things and raise the bar. Tell yourself you are going to give your kids an example that will make them better people, that would make them people that other people admire and respect and want to copy. So carefully consider what we expose our children to and what they develop, just like the musical talent that people develop because they were exposed to it during their growing years. We have to ask ourselves, what am I exposing my child to that I would like them to develop during their growing years? And it is these things that become our children's inheritance. And it really is the gift that keeps on giving. If we can teach our children by our example to be kind, to be patient, to be generous, to be considerate, to respect others, to respect nature, we have, by our example, enriched their lives. So I hope you find this useful, listeners. As always, please send your requests in. Please comment on South Coast Radio. Let us know what you think, and you can catch this talk on Spotify and on YouTube. Have a great end of week and weekend.
The radio station you can't live without. This is your radio.
This is South Coast Radio.